Okay, so are we ready? Good? Okay. Some house cleaning stuff before I start. So every month, we put on events. It's usually co-hosted by DescriStartup, NAP, Executive with Impact, and UTCSSA. So I just want to thank you everybody for, volunteering your resources and putting this together, making it happen. Okay, and thanks for everybody for, coming out, sharing great stories. We got two speakers here today, Matt and Kevin. So I don't know if you all read the event description. Actually, why don't we start by introducing Matt and Kevin by yourself?
You want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, why don't you do that? I don't get hot, so.
I wrote it all down. All right, hi there. Thanks for coming out. This is great. If you can't hear me in the back, just I'll try to speak as loud as possible. I'm used to actually speaking without a mic, but here we go. My name is Matt Himel. I went to the University of Western Ontario. I did a joint degree in law and Ivy. I was a lawyer at a New York firm and then in Toronto for 4 years called Davey Close and Weinberg. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the law scene in Toronto. I quit cold turkey middle of last year, did some interviewing, and landed at a spot called tilt.com. We also have an app.
I'm going to hold you there. Has anybody actually researched what Tilt is before coming to the event? Can you tell us what it does?
That would be great, yeah.
It's like something like starting right, help people to raise money.
So crowdfunding.
It's a good start. It's a good start. Yeah. Do you want me to go into it? Tilt.com, or Tilt the app, is the easiest way to collect money from a group of people, or more likely your group of people. We are a crowdsourcing or crowdfunding. We call ourselves a micro crowdfunding application. So we think that the majority of you aren't actually going to raise $75,000 or $1 million to make a watch or to write a book or film a crazy documentary about saving dolphins in the Indian Ocean. But we do think that many of you, and most likely all of you, are going to need to collect money from a group of people at some point in the next week, month, year, and that looks like buying a gift for a friend and sharing the resources, so everyone contributes $5, and someone goes in and buys a gift for your friend, or a bachelorette party, or a cottage weekend with your friends. And we have lots of use cases. We have friends who are in university together and share rent. They share their Rogers bill, so one person's responsible for paying their Rogers bill, and their deadbeat roommates never pay them, so they start a Tilt campaign and everyone just contributes either by credit card or a debit card, and it's totally free, and the money goes straight into the person's bank account. So we could have actually, and I was yelling at Cindy earlier, collected the money for tickets for this event. Everyone, instead of paying Eventbrite a 12% fee or whatever they take, can just contribute on Tilt, and the money would go straight into Executives with Impact's bank account, and would have been much more social and friendly and cost a lot less. So lots of use cases. I'll let you guys ask me lots of questions.
So basically, no revenue from your ticket collection, right? We're going to talk about your revenue model in a bit, so just keep that in mind.
Cool.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Klages. I'm the co-founder of Planitar. I'm not a lawyer. I went to school to be a school teacher, and because this is a startup event, I can say I pivoted and wound up in the design and construction of global sporting events for 9 years. From there, I moved into quantity surveying, which is associated with cost management, cost finance of capital projects. It was while I was working with a quantity surveyor that I got involved with my co-founder Alex in a software system that documents interior spaces. I've always, my career's been involved in documentation of existing space, whether it was in major games or whether it was in quantity surveying. I was always concerned with existing space, what it looked like, how it was measured, areas. So my co-founder and I created Planitar. He had been working on a camera system. He is literally a Russian physicist, and designed a camera that will allow us to map interior space. So we can go into a property and completely document it with 360-degree views. We can create floor areas, we can create measurements. as well as capture a number of other details and take all this data that we capture on site and use it for limitless possibilities. So the company's Planitar, our initial product is iGuide, and I think I'm here more as an ambassador for the Kitchener-Waterloo startup community.
Which is commute tech, right?
Communitech is really the big heavyweight in the startup ecosystem in Kitchener-Waterloo.
Anybody heard of commute tech? Great. Great incubator out of Waterloo. We got Mars and we got other incubators in the Toronto area, right? So
I
that's
just came back from the kitchen today because I thought you had to from China to talk about some law.
There's a lot of the Chinese investment coming into, there's a lot of investment here in
I
Kitchener.
do know Jason. Jason from the 4G Tango.
Yes. Yeah, I know Jason.
good community. Okay. So we're gonna start asking questions back and forth between the two of you. So give us your perspective on that. First of all, I guess everybody's really interested in raising funds. How many of you from the audience actually are interested in learning about raising funds and are in the process of doing that? Usually I expected a bit more hands than that. Okay, you guys are too shy.
Everybody's shy.
Everybody's shy, okay. So why don't we start, because Matt, you are a... So actually, Matt, why don't you start telling people a bit about the whole financing success of Tilt and how it rolls out in Canada in terms of financing perspective. And Kevin, then you can actually talk about, through your experience of securing successfully raised funds, what's the difference between US fundraising and Canadian fundraising? Because I think there's good lesson for everybody to hear.
Okay, so I would actually, I don't want to mislead anyone, I joined Tilt after they'd already done raising the $37 million that you guys have seen. We're in the process, I guess all companies that have raised the Series A and Series B are always in the process of raising more capital. But when I joined, we'd already raised $37 million, which is great, and I highly suggest that you join a company that's well funded. It saves a lot of heartache, and they have money to pay you, which is also quite the best way to tackle this, given that we were already funded when I joined.
How did you, so let me put it this way, you are responsible for rolling out the Canadian operation, correct?
Sure, yes.
Without money, do you think you can do that?
So let me explain. So Tilt actually doesn't charge anything to people who collect money from their friends, family, and if anyone really asks, we'd give a promo code that would waive any relevant fees. So typically what happens is I start a campaign, I send it out to all my friends, I say we're playing soccer this weekend, I want $10 from each of you. If we collect $200, then we're all good and we're on. And if we don't get to $200, nobody's credit card gets charged. Typically, everyone's credit card would get charged a 3% processing fee, but I, as the administrator, wouldn't pay anything to collect. So we don't really make any money because the 3% is actually getting passed on to the credit card processor. We do, however, waive all those credit card fees now that we're rolling out in Canada and the US, and we don't really foresee charging anyone those credit card fees. So essentially, it would be you paying $10, and the $10 would go straight into the pocket of the person who's collecting the money, and there would be no fees whatsoever. So how do we do that without, how do we continue to evolve without making any money? So we make money off enterprises, and I was just talking to Kevin about this on the side, which is we power a lot of websites that you guys wouldn't necessarily know are powered by Tilt. So anyone heard of Frank and Oak? Anyone heard of the Montreal design house Frank and Oak? Very popular online platform. So we just launched a deal with them, I think at the end of last week, and people are buying gift cards to spend on Frank and Oak online, and the city that crowdfunds the most gift cards will then get a pop-up shop in that city. So they're doing it across 15 different cities in the US, and the top 6 cities that crowdfund the most money through gift cards will get a pop-up shop, and Tilt is powering all the individual cities. So that's one way where we would make money. So we're making money on one side, we're eating money to acquire users on the other side, and there's at least a balance so that we're not, hey, we've raised $37 million, and now we're spending $50 a head trying to acquire users until we get down to having no money left, and then we're like, okay, do we need to get sponsored websites? Do we need to start charging people a lot of money to collect from their friends? What do we do? So at least we're making money on one side, we're eating money on the other, and hopefully we'll just continue to build a large user base.
So you don't actually worry about fundraising?
I don't worry about fundraising on a day-to-day basis. The way the Canadian office got, my partner in the Canadian office actually went to fund his ski trip in Canada and searched online. And this is an interesting lesson. We don't do much SEO or SEM because it's actually quite a difficult thing to search for on Google. So you're planning a ski trip and you know it's a pain to collect money from your friends, but you don't know that there's a solution. So you're rarely going to run to Google and be like, is there something that saves me money collecting money from my friends? I hate collecting money from my friends. Anyway, you can never SEO or SEM for something like that. And so it's very difficult for us to generate those kinds of queries. So actually my business, the guy who runs our international now, emailed the founder of Tilt in San Fran and said, and this is probably a good lesson for you, if you come across a startup in the US that you find extremely interesting, never hesitate to reach out to someone and see if they have plans on launching in Canada. So he reached out to him and said, hey, I'm trying to crowdfund my ski trip this weekend. Why aren't you operating in Canada? And he responded, why don't you tell me why I should be operating in Canada? And he said, okay, what do you want? He said, I want a 30, 60, 90-day plan and a budget in 2 weeks. And thus launched the Canadian operation of Tilt about a month later. And we've been responsible for about 30% of our growth ever since then. So you can imagine we're about 10% of the population, but responsible for 30% of Tilt's growth since that time. So pretty exciting times in Canada, but also a cool lesson. He legitimately didn't have, so our founder in San Fran is James Bishara is his name, and my international lead didn't know what his email address was. It wasn't on LinkedIn, it wasn't online, so he just emailed james@tilt.com, jimmyb@tilt.com, jim@tilt.com until he got it. And it's an interesting lesson. It's something that I learned when I quit my law firm, and I'm getting away from the topic a little bit, but when I quit my law firm, never hesitate to reach out to someone that you think might want to be hearing from you. So I'll pass it on.
Our path was slightly different. So when Alex and I started developing our technology and working on it, we spent about 18 months developing it before we even went to market. And our thoughts were within our space and within the interior mapping space, there's a lot of interest. So you've got the likes of Google and Apple, as well as a number of others, moving into what they call the interior space race. So Google, for the most part, has been blocked at people's front doors. They haven't been able to get inside. So what we figured, we had developed a technology that would allow these guys to get inside. So when we developed a working version, our thoughts were we were going to take it to market, get proof of concept, and then sell out. Which 4 months after we launched, we were offered the opportunity. So we wound up forming a panel of advisors to help us weed through it and decide what we wanted to do. And they said, it's really early after 4 months. Great, let's keep it going. So we went another 4 months, and we had another offer. So at that point, we decided that maybe this is a business we want to work on ourselves. So we decided, well, let's go out and raise some money and let's create a company. And that's what we did. And neither of us are seasoned tech guys, so are seasoned startup guys, I should say. And the whole notion of raising money, it isn't a fun process. It really isn't. Even when people want to throw it at you, it's still not fun because it takes a lot of your time. And you will hear that fundraising for a CEO, it really is a full-time job, and that is no lie. Even, I was talking with another startup today who was asking me about how we got funded. And we were offered our money, so we didn't actually have to go out. And I had heard repeatedly that when you're out pitching for funds, you might do it 70, 90 times. It's much like being an actor, get used to rejection. We didn't even have to
have that problem, yet it was a full-time job, working with lawyers, working with accountants. And I love what you guys do, but your documents are so boring.
Lawyers in the house?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Oh.
Yeah. Like,
Go on. 2. Okay.
You don't have
Be
to
careful.
anymore.
Yeah. Reading through a 15-page term sheet repeatedly and having to watch for the slightest corrections. And when the investors and your lawyers and their lawyers and your lawyers, that ping pong match of going back and forth, it's an interesting process. So yes, we got it done. We'll have to do it again, I'm sure, especially as we're starting a U.S. expansion. So we know we're getting ready to have to go through the whole process again and getting mentally psyched up to do it. The difference between Canadian and U.S. investment, we've spent a lot of time on this and been asked it. We've got some U.S. investment, we've got some Canadian investment, and the culture is very different between the two. The best example or analogy that was put to me is Canadians want a 10% return on 90% of their investments, but the Americans are looking for a 90% return on 10% of their investments. So they're animals. U.S. VCs, they might give you hugs, they might invite you out to their house for dinner and meet their family, but they're out for blood. And I don't even understand. This is a marriage, but they're wanting to take advantage of you on the first date. So you really, I'm tainted, but we've got some great ones. But you really do have to be careful when you're raising money.
How many of you guys are thinking about going to US for founding? Everybody stay in Canada? Okay. So, remember that, okay?
Just 2 things while I was listening. One thing is I do have, I wouldn't say a fair amount, but I do some angel investing on the side. And one thing that I can totally tell you 100% is that be honest with people that you're trying to raise money from, because it's a small community and people find out, so oftentimes they'll brag about people that they've brought on board as investors already, or they'll brag about partners that they're doing partnerships with, and it takes me all of 2 seconds to leave the meeting and email the person or call them or find out from a friend whether or not they're invested in that deal or whether or not they're thinking about it. And if I leave a deal and someone says, Cindy's involved in that deal, this is a good reason to come into it, and I message Cindy and she's like, no, I'm out with those guys, like, I'm going to pass on that. That is an almost immediate kind of no for me. So honesty is really important, both in who else is investing and also what's going on with the product. Because if you can't trust them the initial stage of raising money, then you can't trust them going forward to take your money and spend it properly.
By the way, we take questions along the way, so if you have any burning questions, don't